You pass over into the afterlife after your last moments, thinking the story is over. You expect light, or darkness, or nothing at all. Instead, you wake up standing on cracked red ground under a burning sky, and devils are already arguing over you like lawyers in a property dispute. One of them is holding a contract with your exact name, your exact memories, and a line that says, Avernus. You never signed anything, at least you don't remember signing, but in the nine hells, your yes doesn't always look like ink. It can be an oath, a moment of rage, a promise you made when you were desperate. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is the price. Most people imagine hell as torment, screaming, and burning. In Baator, also known as the nine hells, that is almost secondary. The true weapon of hell is orderly agreement. You are not usually dragged there by force. You are escorted there under the weight of an oath, a deal, or a contract. Tonight, we delve into a full descent through the nine hells of Baator and how it helps shape the universe of these forgotten realms. We will move through all 9 layers, and for each one, we will look at what it is, how it works, who rules it, and what happens to someone who finds themselves there. We will also talk about how a mortal, a player's character, might navigate each layer without instantly being lost to it. To understand Baator, it's not enough to know where it is. You have to understand what it is for and who dwells there. At the cosmological level, the 9 hells are one of the lower planes. The plane's lawful evil essence shapes its denizens and the way power flows through its ranks. Archdevils, powerful creatures who each rule a layer, ultimately to the authority of a singular entity. This planar placement and alignment framing comes straight out of the basic rules and Dungeon Master's Guide material on the planes. Devils are fiends native to the 9 hells of Baator, defined by their moral alignment. It means hierarchies, rules, and obligations are the engine of their society. They do not rely on chaos or impulse. They systematize evil and enforce it through ranks, codes, and contracts. In 5th edition's official rules, devils are consistently presented as the quintessential lawful evil outsiders. Devils stand opposite demons in the Blood War, a foundational eternal conflict across the lower planes. Official Mordenkainen-era material emphasizes that this war defines fiendish strategy. Not to be confused with devils, demons are pure, chaotic evil. They destroy and consume. They want to dominate through overwhelming force and rage. Ironically, this conflict keeps the infinite layers of the abyss at bay, the birthplace of the demons, a chaotic, evil universe unto itself, with uncountable layers of infinite variety. The abyss's place in the cosmology of the Forgotten Realms shifted over time, but the nature of the plane remained fairly constant, a violent, malevolent place where the strong survived on the backs of the weak. The weak conspired to overthrow the strong. Alliances only lasted while convenient, and the landscape itself tortured the mind and body of all who dared to pass. Normally, the lower ranks of demons possess no self-control. They tear and devour and burn until there is nothing left. This contrast is the very definition of their conflict. What devils actually do, day to day, is shape behavior with offers, terms, and consequences. Devils justify their actions by framing their dealings as mutually beneficial, emphasizing the short-term gains for mortals while subtly twisting contracts to their advantage. They view their strict, hierarchical system of the nine hells as the ultimate order, and their pursuit of power and souls is seen as a natural, righteous path to advancement within that system. Deals are the cleanest way to convert a mortal life into an infernal asset. Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus, highlights infernal contracts as a devil's core tool in action. The nine hells are arranged vertically, 9 layers stacked in descent. Each layer has an archdevil in charge. These archdevils are powerful beings, and each of them thinks, plans, and governs according to a particular method that reflects the layer they control. Officially, they are loyal to Asmodeus, the Lord of the Nine. Unofficially, every archdevil is waiting for an opening to gain more status and more control. This tension is built into the plane. Each layer exists both to support hell as a whole and to serve its own ruler's strategy. When a mortal dies, their soul moves on for judgment. In most cosmologies, what happens next depends on many things: divine claim, alignment, vows, behavior, pacts, even the way someone understood morality in life. Devils exploit that moment. They then acquire souls using 3 main methods. The first method is through contract. Devils do not usually operate in a forceful manner. Instead, they speak to an immediate need. You want strength to defend your home. You want justice when no one else will act. You want revenge for what was done to you. The first offer is often reasonable. The devil then binds this aid to terms. Maybe you serve in the future, maybe you owe a favor. Devils write these terms as legal structures and then enforce them. They do not have to lie. They only have to define the language for their benefit. The second method is through oaths. Sometimes a mortal swears service to an archdevil, or swears to uphold an infernal bargain, or binds not only themselves, but their bloodline. In the logic of hell, that can be interpreted as consent. An oath, in the eyes of Baator, is a binding claim. The third method is through long-term corruption. If you live a life actively in service of lawful evil, not chaotic cruelty, not wild destruction, but controlled, exploitative, systematic harm, then you are already aligned with the hells. Devils do not just tempt people into single acts. They tempt people into patterns, a career of organized tyranny, an agreement to run a city the infernal way, a lifetime of keeping order through fear and control in the name of stability. All of this can move you, slowly but completely, into hell's gravity. Once a devil claims a soul, the next step is transformation. Most newly damned souls are reshaped into lemures. Lemures are the lowest rank of devil. They appear as twisted, melted, nearly mindless masses of flesh and suffering. They are not glamorous, but they are extremely important. Lemures are the building blocks of hell's armies, labor pools, and future promotions. Over long service, under strict control, a lemure can be reformed into a stronger devil. Imps, spine devils, barb devils, chain devils, bone devils, Erinnyes, ice devils, pit fiends. This possibility of promotion is how hell motivates obedience. This system accomplishes 2 things. It turns souls into labor, soldiers, and currency. It turns obedience into ambition, because devils are taught that if they are efficient enough, ruthless enough, and loyal enough, they can rise. Now that we understand the input, we can go layer by layer and see the output. we enter the first layer of hell, Avernus. Avernus is war. The landscape reinforces this notion. The sky is a constant red burn, like the ceiling of an endless battlefield. The ground is cracked and blasted. You see dried rivers of ash, open craters boiling with leftover demon blood, and the wreckage of infernal and abyssal war engines, scattered like bones. You hear distant impact strikes and infernal artillery. The conflict never ends. Avernus is ruled by archdevil Zariel. Zariel is a fallen angel, once a celestial commander who tried to fight demonic evil directly. She fell, and now she is the archdevil of this layer. Zariel sees herself not as corrupted, but as refined. In her eyes, demons are chaos, and chaos must be controlled. She is willing to use the methods of hell to fight what she believes is a greater evil. That belief is how she justifies everything. Avernus exists for two main reasons. First, it is the front line of the blood war. Demons from the abyss appear here in endless waves, tearing their way into the plane. Devils push them back and try to contain them in Avernus before they can spill deeper. That is the day-to-day reality of this layer. This is not a metaphorical battlefield. This is a literal, constant war zone. Second, Avernus is intake. Most newly claimed souls enter hell through this layer. From there, they are sorted. Some are thrown into the war as fodder. Some are reallocated to other functions deeper down. Some are held for specific kinds of use. For a mortal who physically enters Avernus, this layer presents immediate danger. You are seen in terms of function. Can you fight? Can you be made to fight? Can you be used to bargain with an archdevil? You cannot behave like a neutral visitor. In Avernus, neutrality reads as unclaimed asset, and unclaimed assets are taken, most of the time, against their will. To move through Avernus and not be consumed by it, a living traveler must make themselves visibly under authority. That can mean declaring themselves as the agent of a specific devil, standing under a devil's protection, or negotiating temporary status. Devils respect hierarchy. If you belong to someone higher ranked, you can be allowed to exist long enough to act. Without that, you are simply material. We then descend to the second layer, Dis. Dis is the Iron City, an endless urban sprawl made entirely of black iron, barbed towers, gated avenues, watchful balconies, and heat that seeps out of the metal. The sky is hidden behind smoke and structure. Dis is ruled by Baator, the Iron Duke. Baator is cautious, calm, layered, and almost never personally exposed. His control is not loud, it is total. Baator is defined by absolute paranoia and absolute preparation. Dis has a very specific purpose: internal security. Within these walls, every word is overheard, every deal is noticed and potentially recorded. Every plan, every alliance, every piece of ambition is tracked. Nothing operates off the record. The city itself can shift, streets can seal, alleys can curve, doors can vanish. Baator can isolate you not by sending an army, but by quietly moving the city so that you are now inside a controlled pocket. Dis is where hell monitors itself. Archdevils may rule their layers, but Baator prevents uprisings that could destabilize Baator as a whole. His spies report on other spies. His informants report on other informants. Any devil that rises too fast without authorization gets noted, profiled, and quietly corrected. For an outsider, traveling through the city of pain can be a disorienting undertaking. Several miles tall and hundreds across, to call it a vast maze of a city is an understatement. It is a labyrinth, almost constantly defying possibility, where one could truly wander the streets forever and get nowhere for the effort. The danger is as follows. Everything you say can be extracted and repeated perfectly, with context. Lying is worse than not speaking. If you are caught lying in a way that wastes an infernal agent's time, you are flagged as unreliable, then removed from the board. From the walls to the cobblestones, all of Dis is constructed of the same smoking, unrusting blackened iron, which glows red-hot from the infernal heat. Just being near the smouldering metal is enough to slow and drench mortals with sweat, and even casual contact with most exterior architecture will horrifically and agonizingly burn mortal flesh. Without proper protection, most visitors would quickly end up writhing in the streets. To move through Dis safely, you behave as if you are already being quoted in court. Never assume privacy. And if you find yourself playing infernal politics, tread lightly, because in Dis, everyone answers to someone. The air is heavy, wet, and foul as we arrive at the third layer, Minauros. This layer is best described as a great stinking swamp, a fetid marsh of mire, muck, and misery, extending further than one could possibly imagine. The economic center of the ninehells, where new souls are processed and minted, its great wealth belied by its ramshackle appearance and unenjoyed by the vast majority. The layer was arguably the most diseased of all the lower planes, a dismal morass of reeking, rotting earth and inches of polluted water where the corrupting powers of poison and illness were enhanced and recovery diminished. The stinking mire is the layer of greed and the avaricious, a wretched fen of toxic influence that promised only sickness and despair, slowly pulling everything beneath the putrid mud. Mammon, the archdevil of greed, is potentially the richest being in existence. Both literally and figuratively two-faced, the archdevil Viscount was a feckless miser whose only loyalty was to coin. He is the personification of transactional corruption. He is not a subtle manipulator of hearts, open, direct, and unapologetic. Alongside being avaricious, Mammon is also megalomaniacal, lusting after power, and always scheming to acquire more of it. Not only sinister, but shameless, a cringing wretch of an archdevil who keeps his position and throne primarily by acts of flattery, connivery, and bootlicking, most charitably described as embarrassing. Pressing on, Minauros exists to convert sin and surrender into currency. In this layer, souls are openly treated as assets. They are bought, sold, and loaned. The souls of the damned, even those fated for other realms of torment, generally made their way to Minauros first. They arrived in jangling Hyta to undergo processing, which entailed a regimen of torture to prepare them to become lemures. Other archdukes outsourced much of this work to the City of Chains and its factory-like flaying facilities. Souls were carted in by the tumbril and then shipped off the same way to the sinking city when stripped of personhood and ready for transforming. All lemures passed through the sinking city, where they would be recorded and redistributed as appropriate. He and his greater devils also created soul coins, one of the primary forms of infernal currency, in vast chambers from the spirits of the wicked. Bribery is official practice. If you want movement, you pay. Extortion is defined as negotiation under pressure, which is considered legitimate. Blackmail is a ledger entry. Debts are catalogued, and those debts become the chains that hold devils to one another. Minauros is where hell turns damnation into numbers. Everything you are, not just your power, not just your position, but your pain, your needs, your story, all of it becomes negotiable. You are reduced to leverage. For a mortal in Minauros, the risk is that desperation becomes public. If you are desperate, that desperation is valued, priced, and offered to someone who wants a soul in your situation. Once you are assigned a number, you are considered inventory, and inventory does not speak for itself. Escaping through a portal, we now find ourselves in the fourth layer, Phlegethos. Phlegethos is best described as a brutal expanse of giant volcanoes, a tortured nightmare landscape of fire, lava, and heat, antithetical to most forms of life. Here the powers of fire are enhanced, while those of water and cold are diminished and extremely difficult to use. Any creature without some resistance to fire present in Phlegethos would be quickly immolated. Its structures are designed to withstand the intense heat and occasional redirected lava flow. Phlegethos is a plane that exists to burn. It is nearly identical to the elemental plane of fire, more so than any other place in the cosmology, distinguished by the greater presence of pain and malevolence. It is one of the most visited of Baator's layers, the legendary archetype most often envisioned by those of the material plane when thinking of the horrors of the ninehells. Ruled by the archdevils Belial and Fiona, it is the center of the ninehells judicial system, where devils and mortals alike navigate the impossibly intricate legalities of Baator and face both the ecstatic highs of victory and the excruciating lows of defeat. Phlegethos exists to rewire loyalty, a fiery desolation of officiated debauchery and damnation. In this layer, pain and pleasure are deliberately intertwined. You are not only tortured, you are given relief in a way that binds you to the source of that relief. Resistance is worn down not just by force, but by repetition. You are led to believe that you are choosing to submit, choosing to belong, choosing to obey. You are turned from captive into participant. The function of Phlegethos is this: it produces obedience that does not require constant external pressure. It manufactures willful loyalty. For a mortal, the danger is twofold: surrendering to be converted to a willing servant, and the environment itself. The landscape of Phlegethos is bleak, featuring gouting fires, hills of ash, pits of smoking dung, and massive volcanoes underneath a dark, starless void. The volcanoes expelled rivers of lava that flowed into bubbling pools and seas of molten magma, which brewed hurricanes of hot wind, choking smoke, and pyroclastic ash. So permeated by heat was Phlegethos that the ground was always uncomfortably hot, and the air temperature high enough to char meat and ripple the air with distortion. To pass through this layer without losing yourself, you set clear internal limits before you ever enter a negotiation. You understand that the land itself is set against you. You recognize that in Phlegethos, temptation is not decoration. Temptation is the weapon of choice. The fourth plane is where hell proves that control of the body is not enough. True control is control of the will. As we continue our descent, your body begins to slow. Ice forms around your eyelashes, and your breathing becomes labored. Welcome to the fifth layer, Stygia, Ruled by the archdevil Phlegethos, it is also known as the Frozen Wastes. Much like its prince, is an unusual part of Hell's hierarchy, fulfilling no explicit function. Instead, the untamed expanse that was the Great Sea was a proving ground, an environment of cruel cold and active conflict that tested the prowess and endurance of infernal soldiers against monstrous beings that did not fear them. Phlegethos is both ruler and prisoner. He is physically trapped, sealed inside an enormous block of ice as punishment for betrayal. He cannot walk his own lair. He cannot leave. Yet despite that, he still governs. His agents carry his will. His influence moves across other layers and even beyond the ninehells itself. Besides the bitter cold, the other connecting theme of Stygia is the bitter, bloody backstabbing of its master. The fifth is an uncaring hell, a place that rips away love and compassion, consumes sorrow, and for some period of time at least, had a pervasive sense of hunger lingering beneath its biting winds. For a mortal, contact with Phlegethos is never advised. Every promise he makes is a piece in a much older and much larger game. If you assist him, you step into a grudge that is older than you can imagine. For a mortal to survive in the frozen waste, keep to yourself, move quickly and quietly. Understand that nothing is forgotten. A promise or a slight will always be remembered. Bring plenty of cold-resistant clothing, and always keep a flame near your person. Suddenly, the icy, slick ground begins to give way to a treacherous slope. You have entered the sixth layer, Malbolge. Malbolge is structured punishment. Earlier versions describe it as a landscape of broken rock and constant landslides, where the ground itself tries to crush you in never-ending collapses. More recent visions show the sixth as a twisted, diseased bureaucracy, a place of prisons, surgical torment, mutation, and pain. Glacia is the lord of Malbolge and daughter of Asmodeus, therefore making her the princess of the ninehells. Glacia was perhaps the least predictable of the archdevils, with a reputation for capriciousness and a history of whimsy and mischief. She takes pride in her nonconformity and openly flouts the norms of hell at her leisure, breaking tradition while bending the rules. Surprising others with unexpected gambits is a source of delight for her. Even before she became an archdevil, she was somewhat rebellious and defiant, moving between courts as the mood struck her. An extremely inhospitable layer, Malbolge tended to be avoided even by devils, and across it could be found freaks and cast-offs disfigured by Glacia's displeasure and left to dwell in the darkness. Malbolge is best described as one seemingly endless, infinitely large slope, as if it were the sides of an impossible massive mountain. Boulders and other debris rain down from its heights in deadly and deafening landslides, and to avoid these, the inhabitants live either in great caves carved into the mountainside or crumbling fortresses. The sixth layer is arguably the most treacherous of Hell's layers and the hardest to traverse. The slope, slowing movement down to about half the normal rate, even for those skilled in mountaineering, and to a quarter for those without such aptitude. The entire circle exists on a tilt, ranging from mild, about 10 to 15 degrees, to severe, which could be beyond 75 degrees. There is no naturally occurring horizontal planes to be found, making it difficult to rest or build, and making falling a constant danger, as one could plummet anywhere from 10 to 10,000 feet before smashing into stone. Most denizens had the privilege of teleportation to mitigate this issue. while most travelers did not. The danger to a mortal in this realm is the danger of imprisonment or torture. Traversing this plane is highly discouraged, as resting is nigh impossible. If your party finds themselves within Glacier's domain, do yourself a favor and find the nearest portal. To survive Malbolge, preparation is key: rope, tools, and avoiding detection. If you are detected, use every trick in the book to stay free from imprisonment. Once you find yourself in a cage, there's very little hope of escape. If an archdevil decides you are useful, you may be transferred upward. If not, you vanish into the process. If your party manages the arduous journey through the 6th, you continue into the 7th layer, Maladomini. Maladomini is decay and shame. The layer is covered in ruined cities, abandoned palaces, cracked statues, dried canals, and half-finished grand works. You see entire neighborhoods that were clearly meant to impress, now falling apart, and new projects already under construction to replace the last failure. Balzabul, formerly an archon known as Triel, is the lord of Maladomini and most infamous archdevil next to Asmodeus himself. He was known as the Lord of the Flies because his webs of intrigue were so tightly woven that not even flies could escape, but the form he was cursed with by Asmodeus earned him a new, hated title, the Slug Archduke. Of Balzabul's numerous flaws, his most crippling was his perfectionist extremism. His unfiltered dedication to achieving physical flawlessness and greater dominion was what caused his initial fall from the 7 heavens. As such, callous ambition was more befitting of a devil. He had become an abusive taskmaster during his time in hell, a sadistic torturer that displaced his anger on his subjects and loved disheartening them. But after being cursed, he became neglectful and miserable himself. Balzabul was still dangerously cunning and charismatic. Even when trapped in his inarticulate, slug-like form, he was still the Lord of the Lies, whose every deception and false statement was made with ease. He was not to be mistaken as a pathological liar, as he told each untruth with a purpose in mind, and indeed managed to keep a hold on his lair for several millennia without lying, at least to other devils. Maladomini was foul at the level of the air, the ground, and the stone itself. Like Minauros above it, the entire layer stank of rot and poison. The default state of the environment was decay. Anything corrupted, diseased, polluted, or ruined was strengthened, and anything tied to health, growth, or purity struggled to exist at all. It is a world where all things natural were defaced or destroyed. The layer itself was like a wounded animal, constantly shuddering, moaning and oozing a foul black ichor, clinging hopelessly to life in a state of perpetual death. The greatest danger of Maladomini was not any feature of the environment, but the devils under Balzabul's command, intelligent individuals capable of complex strategy and trickery. For a mortal in Maladomini, the danger is political and immediate. You are surrounded by the visible failure of an archdevil with an immense amount of shame and pride. If your party is discovered, prepare to be used in a plot against powers far beyond your understanding, or you'll simply be fodder for the endured humiliation of this realm's ruler. As you exit the portal to your next destination, a powerful gust of freezing wind holds you in place. You now find yourself in the 8th layer, Cania. The layer is marked by moving glaciers and icebergs that drift as fast as a mortal can run, constantly colliding with one another and with surrounding mountains of enormous sizes. Snow avalanches are common and violent. The weather is dominated by snowstorms that howl with incessant winds. Thin layers of accumulated snow often hide deep crevasses that can engulf incautious explorers. Despite its similarity with Stygia, the fiendish cold of Cania was significantly more brutal. With temperatures reaching as low as -60 degrees, it can quickly penetrate non-magical clothing, freezing unprotected creatures within minutes and killing even those wearing gear designed to withstand cold temperatures in mere hours. The environment is so inhospitable that even other devils avoided visiting Cania. Mephistopheles, sometimes shortened to Mephisto and once under the name of Molycroth, is the lord of Cania and most powerful archdevil next to Asmodeus himself. One of the most powerful wizards in the cosmos, he is one of the most dangerous archdevils in existence. On the surface, he's the cool and calculating cold lord, but beneath the visage, he's a grandiose and hot-headed lord of hellfire. Mephistopheles plays up his infernal image as much as possible, intentionally appearing as the classic archetype of a diabolical devil. He is 9 feet tall and striking. His handsome appearance and charming yet unnerving smile of self-superiority contrasted by his more monstrous features. His rule consists of overseeing endless experiments with arcane magic and the nature of the planes, conducted throughout the wastes of his realm. For a mortal in Cania to survive, offer utility quickly. If you are owned by a powerful figure, you may receive protection as property. Understand that Mephistopheles is not thinking in terms of you. He is thinking in terms of hell's future, and whether you are material in that design or friction. In some cases, you may be ignored due to disinterest. Consider yourself lucky if this unfolds. Move quickly and decisively. If you find yourself lost in the ice, you're almost certainly doomed. You discover a pit, a dark and windy shaft, several hundred feet in diameter. You somehow slip the guard and jump through the portal. The 9th and final layer is discovered, Nessus. Nessus is the deepest point in Baator. The layer is a featureless plain with jagged edges that extended 2,500 miles from east to west and 1,100 miles from north to south, floating in an endless red void. The river Styx reaches its final destination here, a location known as the Forgotten Lake. Heavily guarded, any unauthorized visitors are slain on sight. Massive rifts and canyons span the terrain. Fortresses anchored into giant stone are bridged over the void and dot the landscape. There is a constant pressure in the air, a presence, like the layer itself is aware of your trespass. Asmodeus is the Faerunian deity of indulgence and a patron of oppression and power. The greatest devil and ruler of all devil kind, the Lord of the 9th is overlord of all the 9 hells. From his throne at the bottom of Baator, he reigns over his kingdom of unyielding tyranny, ceaseless warfare, and political intrigue, and enacts his diabolical plans to become not only the supreme master of the 9 hells, but of all existence. He is the ultimate authority, assigning punishment, redirecting power, and decides who rises and who falls. Asmodeus's original form was said to be a vast, world-sized serpent, a being of impossible length, stretching for hundreds of miles. His body was covered in scales, and from ancient unhealed wounds seeped black, corrosive blood. An avatar of Asmodeus is handsome, charismatic, and captivating on the surface, appearing as a slim, red-skinned humanoid over 13 feet tall, glowing red eyes, and a perfectly trimmed beard. He is the purest expression of lawful evil, not just a powerful devil, but the idea of calculated, structured evil given will. His master plans extend across the entire multiverse, sometimes taking millennia to come to fruition. To survive, Nessus is not about combat ability. It is about whether Asmodeus finds you more useful alive than dead. Chances are that decision was made centuries before you were even born. Some would say that Nessus represents inevitability. In conclusion, every plane within the nine hells can be attributed to a cog in a giant, well-oiled machine, a complex society of calm and collected evil spread across the entirety of the multiverse. The aim is to expand beyond inner control, but to completely dominate all of existence. The offer always comes at a breaking point. You are out of time. Someone you care about is dying. A hand held out to you in the dark, steady and calm, offering help when no one else will. Imagine feeling, in that moment, that you have no other choice. For that, I impart this wisdom upon you. Always read the fine print. Good luck, adventurer.